Hey everyone, welcome to this video. This is going to be a sketchbook tour video. I'm a little bit nervous about doing this. I don't do many of these videos because it's not very often that I even fill a sketchbook. You can see this is a really cheap sketchbook from a local shop. Let's get straight into it because I have no idea whether this will be a really quick video or whether it will last a long time. So straight away you can see that some of the sketches, or a lot of the sketches in this, are going to be, let's be honest, pretty rubbish. Sometimes I use this more of like a warm-up sketchbook, so just, practicing like the loomis method heads, the construction more than anything. There are some random scraps and bits that I was doodling on. I didn't even realise they were in there, but I'll keep them in there for now. It's a pretty cool design. You're also going to see a lot of things that are wrong. So, as mentioned, it was a warm-up, it was construction. I very much have a tendency to not end up drawing because I'm too precious about things. So this sketchbook was very much a way of me like forcing myself to put something down even if it was rubbish, and hopefully learning from that. For example, this skull with absolutely awful proportions, but I figured get it down and then from there learn that it needs to be elongated, use it as a learning method. Some of these faces are awful. I actually started this sketchbook a really long time ago, to be honest. There's the odd page where I think it's a little bit better, usually working from reference if it looks better. But that means I spent a little bit longer on it as well. But a lot of this sketchbook is just not rushed, but as I mentioned, warm-ups. It's, not overthinking things. There's a lot of like little mistakes like this. This skull just looks awful. Again, a lot of it is down to proportions. And one thing to mention, actually, this is from a while ago when I actually started a 30-day skull drawing challenge. So I already have some videos on this where I show my, thought process and all of the pages that I did these. I think I did like a 7-day update and maybe a 21-day update, maybe a 14-day as well. But I think I only got as far as 21 days with this, and then I pretty much gave up. To be honest, I don't think anyone even watched that video. It's just viewing these pages in a little bit more detail. So I think I felt pretty uninspired. But yeah, that's pretty bad that I didn't even make it the full 30 days. So a lot of these, I think I used the Proko skull, which I've got a video on. I'll put links to that in the description box below and any other videos that related to this. But I really wanted to get my, my drawing of a skull down. I think some of the pages were without reference. And then I started using books, reference, models to sort of learn almost how to improve it, or where I was going wrong is probably a better way of doing it. And then just sometimes I would just draw anything from reference. So you might see some really random stuff in this. There's a lot of jumping back and forth as well. So there's, for example, later on a lot of anatomy from a Proko course, which we'll be looking at. A lot of notes and things like that. And then randomly it'll go to, I don't know, an orc design or something that just, there's not a lot of consistency. But again, that was kind of the idea of this sketchbook for me. Because basically, I'm one of those people that very much, what's the best way of wording this? I'll start a sketchbook for something specific. So I have a faces sketchbook and I have an anatomy sketchbook. I have, a Frazetta style sketchbook where I'm doing studies, a few others, animal design, loads of things like that. And I always want to start a new sketchbook. But the reality of it is I usually end up filling a couple of pages and then pretty much not finishing any more pages. And yeah, basically, again, jumping back and forward. I think this was trying to use some reference from a book to see whether it was worthwhile compared to a screen, whether it was good enough quality. And you can kind of tell that some of these are random because I think, there was a picture of an old man. It might have been Gandalf or Radagast from Lord of the Rings Hobbit. And, I wasn't really paying attention. I kept this book open next to me on a desk. And I just had a pen handy. I think everything in here is a ballpoint pen. And I just started scribbling whenever I got a second. Probably not the best way to learn, don't get me wrong. But the alternative for me is that I very much find I haven't drawn in ages. So sometimes I find it beneficial, just even if it's, something random, at least I've drawn that day. That's the habit that I'm trying to get into now. This was actually without reference, and as weird as it is, I actually thought that was pretty cool. By the way, my apologies if the lighting goes a little bit weird. Warm-up gesture, a little bit more time, still not very good. But yeah, the lighting, it's getting quite dark here, so it may get darker, I'm not sure. And sorry, I don't even know if I finished my thought earlier, but what I was saying is I very much start loads of sketchbooks and never end up getting anywhere with them. I'm too pristine about them. I'm too perfect about them. It's a very bad flaw to have, but I think a lot of artists are the same. So this sketchbook was basically a way of forcing myself to draw anything. It's mainly the foundations, the fundamentals. So maybe it's not particularly nice to look at. Maybe it's even a little bit embarrassing, me showing this. Maybe not embarrassing, but, it's not a nice sketchbook. They're not beautiful drawings like a lot of people use the sketchbooks for. This was really me forcing myself to learn. So you're going to see a lot of anatomy ones. You're going to see a lot of notes and things like that. And I do start breaking things down into mannequins. So really just trying to learn the fundamentals or relearn the fundamentals. There's random bits of perspective throughout. Some of it was, drawing boxes and warm-ups and things like that. So I actually think one of the only other sketchbooks I've done so far was this tiny one from 2020, which is quite a long time ago now. Mainly filled just with photo studies. I'll put links to this in the description box below. This video actually did pretty well. I was really proud of this, but there's not many pages to it, if I'm being honest. But it still took me long enough to finish. And as well as anatomy, one of the things with fundamentals that I really wanted to learn the most was being able to draw characters in space and turn them around, different angles, things like that. Again, I knew a lot of these were rubbish in a lot of ways, but I still liked getting them down. I think I used a casual pose book for reference. It's this one here, actually. So, pose catalogue. I was never sure about these Japanese pose books in general, but I took a gamble and I bought some. Again, I think I've got a video on this, so I will put links on screen and in the description box below. I still think screen reference is much clearer, but I really like having books so that I can cut down my screen time a lot. And I'm not spending too long on each page, or I'm trying not to, because again, there's, I could talk about it all, but I don't want to bore you guys too much. This was the abdominal anatomy section of the Proko anatomy course. Stuff like this, I think, turned out a lot better. You can see when I am working from reference, I'm trying to implement what I studied here. I think I was concentrating, by this point I'd done chest, abs, maybe a little bit of obliques. But yeah, I really like the look of them. But again, it is working from reference. You can tell when I'm not working from reference because I can barely draw a stick figure. And a lot of my anatomy studies, I sort of made these whilst watching the Proko videos. So I was making notes. Again, it doesn't look particularly pretty. These ones are pretty cool. But in general, you'll see some pages are a bit too text heavy. But the thinking behind this for me was pretty much to reinforce that in my mind whilst I was watching the video, whilst Stan Prokopenko was explaining the situation. So, yeah, I mean, I guess I could technically say that I could go back and read through these as well, and that my notes would make sense to me. But again, I realise some of these are probably not too interesting to look at compared to some people's sketchbooks, especially here on YouTube, because there are some insane sketchbooks. Again, something I've tried to do, but I find I need to actually work on the fundamentals. Otherwise, I'm drawing a nice picture from reference and I'm not learning anything. I'm sort of doing it just for the sake of it. So another thing is that this sketchbook is like 150 pages, which is 300 sheets. I actually have not finished this sketchbook. This is sketchbook part 1, let's call it. And I'm pretty much up to the halfway point, maybe a few pages before or after. I don't know, some weird proportions going on throughout this sketchbook. This is leaving me a little bit vulnerable showing this online. But yeah, so this is part 1. But I didn't want the video to be too long. Some people's sketchbook videos are short, some people's I've seen up to like 40 minutes. I don't know what you guys would prefer. A lot of my channel recently has been mainly art books. So I may have already lost a lot of my audience that were actually into art. But yeah, I keep working a lot recently on figures in perspective. The gesture's not too strong on these, but I was trying to concentrate more on the sort of perspective in terms of getting the perspective of each shape correct. I have worked on a few other sketchbooks at the same time, but most of them are a lot smaller, and again I end up working a little bit too pristine and I'm not learning as much. This really is my rough sketchbook. I might even call it in the title, I might call it my messy sketchbook. But this one, whilst it probably doesn't look so nice, and as mentioned, you know, was used for warm-ups, a lot of experimental stuff, whatever I fancied drawing at the time. I think I had some reference from like a graphic pack on ArtStation. I'll put links to those as well in the description. Some really cool like Knight's Armour stuff. Warm-ups of boxes. I've started doing this more and more. Glutes lesson. Again, most of these are from the Proko course. I do have a lot of anatomy books I try and reinforce this with, and I do find that I'm getting a little bit burnt out and bored studying anatomy constantly. But I'm, you know, trying to make myself get through it. The problem I have is I'm going to forget a lot of it. Even when I'm reinforcing this information, I'll probably have to redo this course a lot of times. And I think I'm almost all the way through this anyway now. Section 1. My hope is that, although I know some of these drawings are not, well, not many of these drawings are particularly good actually. They're not really meant to be, although they're not meant to be bad either. I don't mean that, but yeah, you guys know what I mean. But when I watch sketchbook videos, I find them very inspiring, even if the artwork isn't brilliant. Just seeing how hard people are working, seeing what they've been doing and things like that. For me, I find it incredibly motivating. So I'm sort of just hoping that maybe someone watching this will find the same thing, but we'll see. So this one I did not long ago, actually. I think I did this the other night. And I was basically drawing faces, something that most of us want to be able to draw. And I was trying to do it without reference. And I spent a little bit longer, you know, on things like this. I created them from memory and I saw that they were awful. And then I took a photo, put them on my PC and sort of lined them up with other photo reference so that I could compare the proportions. So my thinking here was, as the head tilts up only a little bit, the features are going to get squashed down, as we all know, basic perspective. But I still have found I have a tendency to make my my heads on my faces too wide. So I studied them a little bit better in comparison with that. And I came out with something like this, and then I tried to redraw this. So this was without reference. And you can see, by spending a little bit longer doing that, this one is way better than this one here. And then again, just playing around with different angles. Again, it's not the kind of sketchbook where you're going to see everything getting dramatically better as it goes along. Some things, hopefully, and probably one of the worst drawings in here. I started with the eyes and I started drawing features bit by bit instead of constructing the head first, and wow, I've written LOL there. This one here was not from reference, so I was actually quite impressed with this. I spent a little bit longer than usual. I do get very sloppy in this sketchbook just with a ballpoint pen. Usually I'm staring at a screen and I just have the book on my lap and it's like flopping over and it's difficult to even draw on. I can't get anything neat, so it's kind of my own fault. A habit that I need to break. But yeah, again, going back to anatomy. In fact, I think this one here was from the TB Cho book. In fact, there we go. I've got another video on this one, just because this is handy on my desk. Let's see if I can find the page. There you go. Just looking at her basic skeletons. I really like the way that this artist breaks things down into simplified shapes. I like her style. So I was trying to do that, get a hang of hers, and then see if I could remember the loomis method off the top of my head, because I've studied that a few times. To be honest, still absolutely loads of mistakes there. But it could have been worse, and at least I'm picking up on some of the mistakes. And that's pretty much it, guys. That's where I'm up to, roughly page 75. This one I actually thought, I did this last night, and I thought this was actually pretty good for a rubbishy ballpoint gesture. It was from reference, unfortunately. So that is it, guys. A little bit nervous about posting this. Not sure if anyone will still be sticking around after this length of time. Let me know what you think to this kind of video, if you want to see more like this, although it did take me a while to fill this bit so far. But yeah, let me know if you want to see more videos like this, or if this kind of rough work is too boring. Hopefully this motivated or inspired someone. And be sure to subscribe so I can keep making content like this. Thanks so much, guys.